Welcome to Resilience to the Core podcast with Candace Bester. I cannot believe that we are on episode 9. It feels like just yesterday that we started. So I am so super excited to be introducing 3 people to you today. And they are, let me do them one at a time. So the very first person is a lady by the name of Dina Lillian. So Dina Lillian is a speech therapist and she has her master's in speech therapy, but she actually specializes in stuttering. She has worked in both Australia and South Africa. And Dina re-established an organization called Speak Easy, which is a self-help group for people who stutter. And in 2001, she did that in 2001. She has also spoken internationally, and she's on the board for an organization called the ISA, which stands for the International Stuttering Association. She is going to join us in a minute, and she also has her own practice in the Norwood Therapy Center. The next person that I'm going to introduce you to tonight is somebody by the name of Graham Klawanski, and he works for a company called Freeway, which is a fleet management company. He is a service implementer and he works in client liaison. Before that, he was in the music industry with a company which is very well known in the Gresham family, and he was there for close to a decade. Graham has struggled or has had the challenge of living with a stutter for all of his life, and he's learned how to control it and still enjoy his life. And recently he gave a beautiful speech, not recently, in 2013 he gave a speech at the speech pathology students at Wits, and in 2017 he spoke about his life and his history and his journey on local TV and radio stations. And the third person that I'm going to introduce you to is somebody by the name of Mark Abbott. So Mark has also dealt with stuttering challenges throughout his life, but today Mark is a teacher and he works at a private school in Joburg, and he is the head of pastoral care. So for those of you that don't know what that is, it means for special needs. So without any further ado, let's let them into the room. Hi, guys.
Hi, Candace.
How's it, Graham? How are you?
Great, and yourself?
Fantastic, thank you.
Great.
See, we're just connecting to audio. Welcome, Mark. How's it? How are you?
Very well, thanks, and you?
Fantastic, thanks. And we're just waiting for Dina to connect. Okay, I think there's also been a big storm, and I know that some people are struggling with their connection. So I'm just going to switch things around a little bit, and we're going to start with you, Mark. Mark, can I ask you, how has stuttering affected your life? Can you tell us a little bit about your life story?
To be honest, it was a lot. The majority of when I think about stuttering, it affected my life when I was younger. I have obviously learned to deal with things a lot better now, but when I was younger, I had a severe stutter, and I could hardly get words out, and I really had a difficult time at school. I had a particular teacher at school who was on my case a lot. I am not sure what the reason is, but he would do things like, I can remember being I was quite sporty at school, so I was playing football, which was my passion at the time, and he said that because I was captain of the team, that if I wanted to play soccer, I would need to stand up at the school assembly, and I needed to say the sports results. And now this was something that was, when I talk about anxiety, I cannot even start to say the anxiety that builds up. So eventually I managed to get my mom to phone him, and he agreed that I wouldn't have to say it. And then I remember still on the Friday morning walking into that assembly, he says, "You will say it. I don't care what your mother said. And if you don't say it, you're not playing football anymore." And, you know, it's just one of those moments where you stand up in front of an entire school of people to say something and nothing comes out. And you're trying your hardest, and you know there was no one there to help me. So I managed to get through it. I don't know how, but it was just something that stuck with me after that. It was a massively humiliating experience, and I think if I had to think about my self-esteem in life at an all-time low, I think that was it. And kind of the impact that had on me, I was feeling 10, 15, 20 years after that. So yeah, there wasn't a massive amount of education there, but it was something that yeah, if I talk about, that is my memory of stuttering, and that is the prime example of the effect that it did have on me. You know,
Thank you,
yeah.
Thank you very much. And so we're just going to take a step back. Welcome, Dina.
Thanks. Sorry, internet problems, but we're back.
No problem. We roll with the punches on this podcast.
Absolutely. That's what you got to do in life.
So Dina, can you maybe tell us from your experience and being a speech therapist, what exactly is stuttering?
Well, I think we should take a step back and look at what is speech, right? So speech is the forward flow of communication from one sound to another in order to communicate, right? Stuttering is the disruption of forward flow. So it can either present as a repetition. So typically it would be like that, or it could be a block where nothing comes out, like I've just done that. And that is what we call your primary stutter. So that is what people hear. But I'm sure if some people have come across people who stutter, that you also see some secondary behaviors. And what we talk about with secondary behaviors is hand movements, leg movements, head movements, eye closure. And that is got to do with the stuttering, because as you can imagine, what stuttering is, and we'll go into it, but stuttering has got nothing to do with intelligence. It's not that a person doesn't know what they want to say. It's just for some reason, and we'll get into the cause, I'm sure, within this program, the word doesn't come out. So a person who stutters will try anything in order to get the word out. So if that's clicking of fingers, or if that's moving of a head, that they will do together with the stutter. So that is what stuttering is, but it's actually stuttering. And as Mark said, and Mark, thank you for sharing that, it's much more. And this is what people aren't aware of. And Candace, thank you for having us on the show, because it's really important to educate and tell people about it, because it's much more than just speech. It's much more than can't getting a word out. As Mark said, the anxiety and the humiliation, and Graham is going to talk, that is part and parcel of a stutter. However, usually with a developmental stutter, where a child just doesn't outgrow disfluency, normal disfluency between the age of 2 to 5 years old, anxiety does not cause stuttering, but it exacerbates it. So we talk about the iceberg, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it a lot on the show, the iceberg theory of stuttering. And Candace, when we were talking, you actually said to me something about an iceberg in other areas of life. But the tip of the iceberg is the overt stutter that one hears. But the covert stutter, the bulk of the stutter underneath, is the emotions, the feelings, the negative thoughts, and all of that, which have to do with stuttering, but is not the cause of it. But that is can lead to a negative domino cycle where one stutters, one feels negatives, one thinks negative, and bullying and teasing and negative reactions from others, as you can imagine, just exacerbates everything.
Thank you, Dina. That makes so much sense. And yes, that was my next question. What causes stuttering?
Okay, well, stuttering has been around for ages, okay? If one believes in the Old Testament, who stutters? Graham, you know this. Can't hear you. Oh. Okay, so Moses stutters, yes, and throughout the ages, Winston Churchill, Marilyn Monroe, the President of America, Joe Biden stutters, okay, and so much research has been done into the cause of stuttering, and the researchers say, and I am quoting here, which I've learned by heart because I have to say it so many times, it's a complex interplay of a number of different factors, which is a lovely way of saying we don't know, okay? However, we do know that factors do come together to contribute it, and genetics sometimes play a role. So 65% of people who stutter, there is stuttering in that family. However, it does not mean that if there is stuttering in your family, your child will stutter. It does not mean if there's no stuttering in your family, your child won't stutter. It's just there's a higher risk factor. And Candace, who do you think stutters more, male or female? In your experience, you're a teacher, right? So,
you're not going to put me on the spot in that one. I'm going to go with male.
Absolutely. So one in every, well, look at this. Look, there's Graham, there's Mark, there's you, there's me. And I actually, while we're on the subject, I became a speech therapist because I stuttered quite a lot as a child, but PS. But absolutely, as you can see already, there are more males than females who stutter. So 1 in every 4 or 5 is a female who stutters.
So if it isn't genetics, then could it be a traumatic experience? Could it be what else could the causes be?
Okay, well, if you want to go into the different possible factors that contribute to it. So genetics is a possible factor. Physiologically, there are 2 sides of the brain. The left side and the right side. Left side of the brain controls the right side of the body. Right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. Language areas are usually in the left side, okay? And what they have found is with people who stutter, at the moment of stuttering, when they've done CAT scans, MRIs, there's less activity in the language area of the brain. Question is asked, is the less activity caused by the stuttering, or is the stuttering caused by the less activity?
Wow.
So is it the chicken before the egg? Is it the egg before the chicken? Who knows? I mean, and research, unless you want to research on newborn babies and the ethics around that is something else.
Okay.
But I mean, they also talk about, and research, obviously research is ongoing. I mean, this world is amazing. We know so much, but yet in some areas we know so little. So what they've recently found is, I'm sure you know, that there's something called neurotransmitters in the brain, and people who stutter have less amount of the neurotransmitter dopamine. So they've possibly linked that, and they, in terms of causes and cure, we'll go into it later, but they're possibly saying there may be medication, but long term that probably doesn't work. But so we actually don't know, but so it could be there's a neurotransmitters, there's a physiological factors, there's a genetic factor, there's they say that another theory is a mismatch of the exquisite timing of speech. So there you go. You can choose what you want.
Okay. Thank you, Dina. That's amazing. And is there a cure? Can it get better? Is there a cure for stuttering?
There's no known cure for stuttering, but, I'm not God, so I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yes either. But there is no known, as far as I know, magic cure for stuttering, but there is definitely a way to manage that stuttering, okay? And the first one is obviously therapy, and that is with a therapist who has a special interest in stuttering. Okay, and therapy can provide one with techniques to manage their stuttering. The whole thing also is the mindset, where that so obviously a speech therapist, and I specialize in the field of stuttering, is I will give the clients who come to see me techniques to manage the stuttering, but it's also about their mindset. It's not that stuttering is bad, because the minute that you think anything is bad, you feel, oh my God, I can't do this. If I do this, it is wrong, and you feel bad, and there's your negative spiral. So it's about being, and I know if there are people watching or listening, who stutter, they'll think, how can you say that? But that stuttering can be okay. Okay, and stuttering is a difference. And obviously, and the whole thing about therapy that I believe in and that I see for myself and with my clients is empowerment, giving the individual power, empowering them to do something at the moment of stuttering. Because I'm sure we'll hear from Graham and Mark again how sometimes, and I know for myself, as a child, sometimes you feel I felt really helpless in terms of stuttering. So there's therapy. There's also self-help groups, which is really important. And Graham's been a part of this for a long time. And it's a speakeasy. I mean, I'll just put it out there as well. There's a speakeasy group in South Africa, and the website is speakeasy.org.za. That's speak.org.co.za, and that's a self-help group just so people know that they're not alone, because 1% of the population stutters across all nationalities, all cultures, all races. So therapy is important, knowing that one's alone. Self-help groups. I mean, one of the things also, 22nd of October is actually International Stuttering Awareness Day. And there is such a vast international group about stuttering. And in South Africa, I don't think people even know about stuttering, or if they know it, it's something that they're embarrassed about or too shy to talk about. And that's why it's great to have Graham and Mark, because they're sharing their stories, and it's also not easy to do. So it's great to just get it out there that it is okay. And just also be for International Stuttering Awareness Day, which is the 22nd of October, we actually arranging a global disfluency online Zoom workshop, which is this Sunday, which will be great because it's actually international speakers. It's for people who stutter. So it's not for speech therapists yet, which I do sometimes do and create workshops for, but this is for people who stutter, to hear other people who stutter, their stories, and to hear internationally that they're not alone, and not only here in South Africa. And, if anyone wants any information, they're welcome to email me. And I don't know if I should give it now or later. So
maybe
it's
at the end.
At the end, yeah, I'll give it at the end.
Perfect.
So so speech therapy, self-help groups, talking to people, being open about it. And some people do come and they say, well, stuttering just disappears, but it's usually the minority, and early intervention is important, but there's also normal disfluency. So children have normal disfluency. So 3 or 4 year olds, if they repeat, certain amount of that is normal disfluencies. Some kids don't outgrow that, and that may become stuttering-like disfluencies. But what's really important is there is help out there for all ages, even 50, 60-year-olds, and one isn't alone, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. In my experience, and I believe, and all the international conferences that I've been to, it's amazing what's out there.
Thank you, Dina. So, Graham, I would love to hear a little bit about your story and how it has affected your life. I'm just a little bit concerned because when you spoke just now, you didn't have sound. Let's try that. Sorry, you don't have volume. I don't know if there's a way you can turn your volume up on your audio. No. Okay, so I'm going to give you a moment to sort that out. And while you're sorting that, yes, it's coming through.
There you go.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
How's it?
Okay. So hi. I'm glad I was able to sort that out. So firstly, I think it's very cool that people who stutter have a day of awareness just for them. I think that's very cool. And almost like an honor to have a stutter, if you know what I mean. But I mean, my story, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, if you knew somebody else who stutters, you would kind of realize it's kind of a generic story, but, it affected me all through school, and obviously, making friends, I was a bit more shy making friends, but luckily, that worked out, and they came to me more than I had to come to them, which helped a lot. And, that helped, my mentality around it throughout school. But obviously school was hard, I had to do speeches privately, and, I had to like position myself in the back of the class, to like hide away from having to read out from a textbook or whatever, So there was that usual kind of stuff that I did and the usual avoidance. But yeah, I mean, there was obviously a very big impact in my life. And, to this day, there's an impact. But I've thankfully managed to live with it and learn how to manage it,
And now that you're on the other side of that, can you tell us some of your coping skills and what you found has really helped?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I've learned some speaking techniques to control my stutter. These are techniques such as, well, some are called, easy onsets and light contacts and phrasing, just to name a few. And these are techniques that I learned through going to speech therapy on and off for about 9 years and practicing those techniques every day. So that's just one way that, I manage it, using those techniques, and also just being aware of my stutter while it's happening, and trying not to panic too much as it's happening, because I probably should be used to it by now, but I suppose it's not that easy, and when I came to a realization a while ago that when my speech is tense and I'm stuttering a lot, maybe all this means is that my insecurities around my speech are driving my thoughts about my speech. So it becomes like a weird,
That's so interesting.
Circle, that goes around.
So how do you think your thoughts would help you in that situation when you start stuttering?
Well, I mean, I realized that if I can just, strip down those insecurities, even just for the moment that I'm speaking, then, my speech generally does improve. And, also just knowing that it is me that is, not allowing myself to speak the way I want to speak. It's nobody else who's, holding a knife over my head,
That's very powerful and very, very helpful for people to know that. I think that awareness is the key. Awareness obviously of the stutter, but then the awareness of your thoughts when you start stuttering. And it's so interesting, and I just feel compelled to add this. One of my very favorite quotes is by a man called Richard Landvetter, and his quote goes like this. He says, "I am who I think you think I am." So I'm not who I think I am, and I'm not even who you think I am. I'm who I think you think I am. So it's a perception of a perception. So how we see ourselves is how we think other people see us. And what's so interesting about that is we don't know what other people are thinking, and we don't know what their perception of us is. I've seen that time and time again in my training. When you stand up or somebody stands up and they're vulnerable and they're scared, their feedback has been the opposite. They've thought people are going to think I'm weak, I'm shaky, I'm not prepared. And the feedback has always been brave, courageous, vulnerable, like totally different to what our minds make it out to be. So that's just something that I found, like I was compelled to share. So thank you. Graham, is there anything else you'd like to add right now? I interrupted you.
No, not really. I mean,
okay.
I will get everything out eventually.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to...
So I just wanted to just jump in there with Graham, what Graham said about his thoughts. And absolutely. So thinking does, the negative thoughts does exacerbate stuttering, but if it's a developmental stutter, it's not the negative thoughts, it's not the anxiety that cause it. So it's the thoughts that do exacerbate it. And Graham, I heard you talk about avoidances earlier, but I'm not sure that everyone knows what avoidance is.
Yeah, so I mean, avoidance is,
and substitution.
Yeah, so that's exactly what it is. So, a lot of people who stutter tend to have a very good vocabulary because they kind of use words that are easier to pronounce rather than the harder words. So, and that's exactly what avoidance is. You know, you avoid using certain words, and also you may even avoid certain situations as well, you know, because it may be a loud venue or whatever, and you know it's going to be harder to speak, and you know you may or may not want to go, you know. So avoidance does play a big part in all of this.
And Dina, I'd like you to share about, I found it so interesting how people would actually order different things on the menu.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, if a person who stutters feels that they're going to stutter on something, you know, and if they really want a hamburger, but they know they're going to stutter on a hamburger, they'll order a Wors roll because they'll get stuck on the H. So, and they may even not like it. But, you know, there's actually, there's a video that I remember watching, and a person who stutter, it was actually, and maybe I'll tell the story after Mark, because I think Mark talked about when you were up in assembly. Is that correct, Mark?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some of the feelings that you felt. And this guy was explaining how it was his chance in class to speak. And he was so fearful of speaking, he put a lead pencil in his hand, because the physical pain was better than the emotional pain that he would feel about stuttering.
Wow.
So
That's a whole new level.
That's the extent. And I'm sure, Mark, you can chat about some of that as well.
Yeah, no, I was the king of avoidance. I remember for about my entire primary school career, the one thing that I really had massive issues pronouncing was the name of my school. So when people asked me what school I went to, I would say I went to a school with the name that I could pronounce. And eventually people kind of clicked on that, you know, but he goes to this school. And my mother was like, no, he doesn't go to that school, but he just told us. And then you get yourself into a position, because you would rather people not know, and you'd rather not go down that road, that you will say something like that. And then, I mean, it's humiliating as it is, but it's better than stuttering or trying to get that word out.
One thing, that's
crazy,
exactly.
it's avoidance. It's choosing words. It's having something to add to a conversation in class and not putting your hand up because you are so scared of what you're going to say. I mean, I remember reading in Afrikaans class, and I used to spend the whole lesson so worried that I was going to have to read. I promise you, I did not hear one word that teacher said the entire lesson. So I used to have to go home and go over everything that they went through in the day, because I was so worried about that she was going to put me on the spot, that I was going to have to read, and reading in Afrikaans was even more difficult than reading in English. And it was about, what are people going to think when I start reading? Yeah, but we have these techniques, and we have these ways of working our way around these things. But, you know, eventually that all catches up to you, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I think you've just summed it up. But what I'm going to ask now is, when it comes to advice, I'd like to separate it into two sections. So, Mark, because you're a teacher, what advice can you give to teachers just in general with regards to stuttering?
You know, there are a couple of simple things. Don't finish a kid's word. Don't tell the kid to slow down and to relax and to take it easy, because, I mean, it's got nothing to do with it. Don't just, if I had to offer the biggest piece of advice to me would be to give a child an option. You know, if the child does not want to speak in class, don't let the child speak in class. If a child does not want to say a speech, do not let them say a speech in front of the rest of the class. Don't, I mean, if the child doesn't want to do unprepared reading, I mean, what is unprepared reading in the greater scheme of things? I'm an English teacher. Unprepared reading counts for nothing. It really doesn't. And if you got a child who stutters, that is the absolute, between unprepared reading and an unprepared speech, is the worst thing that you can possibly do to a kid. So, yeah, it's just you have to be mindful. You have to be mindful. If you've got a child in class who stutters, they don't want to be treated any differently. They don't want people to feel sorry for them, but give them options. don't kind of leave them out, because
Yeah.
there are a lot of kids who are brave enough to take to kind of take it upon themselves to actually speak. But I mean, I wasn't one of those kids. So if she gave me the option of saying, you don't have to read, I'm saying, I'm very happy, thank you very much.
And I think what's glaring at me is, it's even if we take away stuttering, yeah, I think the biggest mindset shift that we have to make is, we were raised in a culture where everybody just does it because everybody else is doing it, and you've got to be fair. So you go through your class list and everybody says a speech, and you go through your class list and everyone gets a chance to do a sum up on the board. And I think that we're so past that, in that we are not minions and we really are individuals. And for us to embrace the uniqueness and to find the children's strengths, and to, I mean, the child who's stuttering may be excellent at designing things. And so it really is about bringing out the child's uniqueness and not putting them into these little boxes.
Exactly.
I recently had a beautiful, I was so lucky that my children are in one of the very best schools, and my daughter lacks confidence in reading big time, and especially in public. And her teacher has never made her read out loud. And I was just so grateful for that, because as it is, she lacks confidence. Can you imagine if she was put in the spot and asked to? And there's ways of getting around it. Like now, we've borrowed the book. She's going to practice a page or two. And it's by the time they get to her, she's totally going to be confident to read that. And slowly but surely, and I think that's where we need to go. We need to go and say, okay, so the child struggles like this. What else is on offer? How can we get around it? As opposed to just ticking the boxes and putting them in these little, we're so past putting children in boxes.
Yeah. And it's also important, as a parent of a child who stutters, to make this very, very clear to the teacher who teaches it, that this is how he feels about it. This is how the child, because it's not often that a child is going to come to you and tell you, because the child does not want you to know that they stutter. It's as simple as that. If they can avoid anyone finding out about it, that's much better for them. So if you could give advice to parents in that regard of a child who has a stutter, just explain to the teacher to be mindful about how this child is thinking and what's going on with this child in terms of his speech, because the anxiety is dreadful. I can't even explain. It's an anxiety. It is, and as Graham was saying, it exacerbates the anxiety. It exacerbates the stuttering. It makes it so much worse, because now you're thinking, what are people thinking of me? Oh, you know how I sound. People are going to think there's something wrong with me, and it just, I can't tell you the amount of anxiety it causes, and with kids especially, when they've got the self-esteems that are fragile, the self-esteem of stutterer is already on the back foot.
Thank you, Mark. Graham, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
I mean, I totally agree with what Mark just said. I mean, that is my exact experience when I was in school, having, that stress when teachers would ask me to speak, and, just try to get out of it if given the opportunity,
I get it. So I am now going to put a little bit of a spanner in the works. And I'm going to speak for a minute about, let's just take stuttering out of the picture for a moment. And I want to share with you why I am so passionate about what I do with regards to resilience and grit. And what we've spoken about up until now is really, I love that we've created awareness around it and some really interesting facts. I've learned so much tonight. So thank you. Thank you, Dina, and everybody is just, I've learned so much. And then obviously, I don't believe that there's any better learning than life. So your guys' life experiences, there's nothing. I mean, I could read 1,000 books and then tell you what I've read, but it's never the same as when you've literally experienced it. So we've spoken about what people should and shouldn't do, and we've spoken about advice for teachers. Now I'm going to flip that on its head, and I'm going to say, right, the reason I do what I do and my wish for the next generation is this, that children have such a strong sense of self-worth, and they realize that it's less about what others think and it's more about how they see themselves. So from that self-worth comes, I'm so okay with myself and I like me so much that if you don't like me, that's okay. So that is just a completely different way of empowering children, because I believe that if it's not a stutter, it's going to be a skew toe. It's going to be the way that you walk. Children will always find fault with something and somewhere. I mean, do you know anybody that didn't have teasing in some degree? I realized that with a speech challenge like you guys had, that it was probably 10 times worse. But I can tell you the things that I was teased about that were ridiculous, that affected me for my whole entire life. But it's because it really mattered to me what they said, and I actually believed what they said. So we train children to look at it and go, you know what, that's what you think, but that's not really what I think. So that's okay. People are always going to say things that are mean, and people are always going to say things that they don't really mean, but I get to choose if I'm going to take it on or not. The next wish that I have is just less labels. So this is such a big passion for me. Who decided that is good and that is bad? Dina, you actually you mentioned it earlier on. So who decided that stuttering is the bad way and us speaking like we do is the right way? Who even decided that? And who decided that a child who is busy and up and down is got the issues, but the child who can sit there like a zombie all day and just not do anything is actually the right one? So I think the less labels is such a big thing for me, because once you label a child with something, guess what? That's exactly what they become. So tell a child that they're hyperactive and they will prove to you, you're right, that's exactly what I am. Tell a child that they've got an issue with confidence or whatever that looks like, that is what they become. Another thing, and I mean, I must be honest, I'm sitting here and I'm telling you this stuff, and it's not because I've done it perfectly. I've been around the block. I taught for 18 years, so I did all the most horrific things. I lost my temper where I threw pencil bags out onto the corridor that smashed. And so I've learned from experience what not to do. And that's basically the part that I'm coming from here. So less labels is a very, very big part for me. Another thing that I really wish for children is the freedom to make mistakes without consequences, to know that it's okay to not get it right. And I really wish we could stop having to be perfect, because it's that pressure of needing to be perfect that makes us think we're imperfect or not good enough. Another thing that I really wish for is real validation, and for children to be able to express their feelings. So I am scared, I am petrified, I am nervous, crying and making it okay to cry. I mean, crying is such an important part of life. But I don't know about you, but I was told, I'm counting to 3 and you've stopped crying, or I'm going to give you something to cry about. So for me, allowing children, so I'm just thinking, if you guys were in that situation where you could just verbalize it, I'm petrified, I'm scared. You didn't have that freedom. You didn't feel like you could own those feelings, and that it's okay to be scared. I might be speaking for you, but I might be generalizing. And if I'm totally off here, you need to speak up and say, Candace, no, that's not at all true.
Sorry, I'm just going to jump in there, because Candace, I agree with you totally. And self-worth is really, really important. But it's about also educating in the school, educating teachers, educating parents, that it's okay to talk about it. And that's
what I'm speaking about.
Yes, absolutely. And Mark, going back to what you saying, it's not that a child who stutters doesn't have to do it. Give them an option. Instead of talking in front of the class, talk to the teacher in break, but the teacher has to have an understanding of what stuttering is, and then help the child or give them tools, Candace, exactly what you're saying, to know that their self-worth isn't dependent on their stutter. Stuttering and self-worth is two totally different things, and the teasing and the bullying and all of that. Graham, Mark, does this make sense for you?
Does, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, it totally is both. So it's totally the awareness and the educating.
Absolutely.
But then there's going to be those people who aren't educated and aren't aware, and so the people who are dealing with the issues like the stutter are the ones that need to have the skills. And I'm very passionate about bullying, and I want to speak about that for one moment. So I see it all the time, and I've experienced it firsthand with my own child. that she was bullied in the one school, and then we moved her, and we didn't move her because she was bullied. We just moved her because I changed jobs. And then guess what? She was bullied in the next school. And then I had to realize that she was the common denominator. And I know so many parents that keep trying to take their child away from the problem. And every time they go to a new school, they are the soft target. So I asked you guys when we chatted last night on a meeting, I said, when somebody was teasing you or laughing at you, what did you do? And your answer, both of you, is like nothing. It was so embarrassing. It was so shameful. And I wanted the ground to swallow me up. And that's the part, I think, that is so powerful. And I want to give you my real example for my daughter. So she used to go to school every single day, happy as anything, until eventually this bullying became a big issue. And I hate putting people into boxes. So I really tried to equip her, but eventually it became quite a big deal. The one morning she woke up and she didn't want to go to school. Her stomach was in a knot. She was physically ill. Anyway, I spoke her through it, and she did go to school. And for some reason, that was the day that she plucked up the courage, where she pulled this child aside and she just said, and when you said this is how I felt. And I think it's so important not to retaliate and make the other person feel bad about themselves, because then we're just doing the same thing. But she gave her data, and she said, and when you said this, and when you did this, and it doesn't feel nice when you do this, and you never let me choose the game. And ever since that day, they have had a totally different relationship. My daughter is happy to go to school, and more than anything, she's found her voice, and she literally doesn't accept people. And the whole thing with bullying is, I believe you teach people how to treat you. And we haven't had the skills, but now children need to get the skills now. They need to get the skills to say, you know what? Speak up for yourself. How are you going to tell that person? Don't just sit there and do nothing. It's very different when we were growing up. We were born in the 80s, am I right? We're giving our age away, yeah? And at that time, it really was about, you don't speak up, and you don't have a voice. So that is really my passion, and wanting to equip people so that when they go out there and they do have to face the challenges that are sometimes terrible, and they are terrible, I'm not downplaying them, that they're a little bit more equipped. Okay, so Dina, can you share some interesting facts about stuttering?
So stuttering, like I said, 1% of people in the population stutters. It occurs across all nationalities, all cultures, all religions, all races. And people who stutter usually don't stutter when they sing, or when they whisper, or when they talk together with someone. Sometimes they don't even stutter when they act and they put on an accent.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you're in the spotlight and everyone's watching you. That's so interesting. It's almost like you go into a different identity.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's amazing, because with people who stutter, and I'm sure, lots of people can identify with it. Some people usually stutter the most on their name, introducing themselves. And Candace, it's very interesting in terms of what you're saying with the self-worth and everything, because there is an element about that and of knowing. That's why speech therapy, obviously there is techniques that I teach that are taught to manage it, but there's a lot about understanding yourself, your self-worth, and knowing and giving yourself empowerment that I am okay even if I stutter, and stuttering is a part of me and it doesn't define me.
And there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. I don't need to be fixed. I'm complete. Absolutely. I'm whole. I'm perfect as I am.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
So it's twofold. It's about giving the child, or giving the adult, or giving an individual that, but also trying to help. So a lot of there's direct therapy, and indirect therapy is environmental modification. So it's how to modify the environment in order to enhance fluency. So teaching teachers, teaching parents about stuttering. And as Mark said at the beginning, when a person stutters, maintain eye contact, don't interrupt, wait for them to be finished, be patient, don't tell them to slow down or calm down, right? It's ironic, because people who stutter can't talk fast because they can't get the word out. So why are you telling them to slow down? And in terms of think about what you want to say, people who stutter, Mark, Graham, you know exactly what you want to say, right? Just doesn't come out at times.
And you just sometimes hope that people are more focused on on the content of the message rather than the delivery.
Mm.
I have to tell you, like, I'm probably one of the worst people in the whole wide world with finishing people's sentences. So I'm very glad that I have that awareness now. And if somebody's really struggling on something, it might not even be a stutter. I finish their sentences for them. And I think that telling somebody to breathe would also not be, like you said, very helpful, because hello, I'm dealing with this as it is. Breathing is definitely not. And in actual fact, you don't know anything that I know. So thanks for your advice, but I'm not interested.
Yeah, and there's also the mindset that, especially when it comes to people who stutter, that I can almost guarantee that it is not as bad as you think it is. I mean, you make it out, and the way that it sounds in your head is 1,000 times worse than you are thinking that it is. It's a strange mindset, but the idea you have of how you sound in your head, I mean, there are some people who wouldn't even notice.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I've had situations where, you know, I worked with somebody a while ago, and for a while, worked with them for a couple of years at least, and you know, they didn't work with me anymore, and one day I was talking with them, and they were saying that, you know, I didn't even realize that you had a stutter, and I was like, but I did stutter around you, but they're like, well, I didn't even realize, you know. So people don't always even take note of that kind of stuff, you know.
And if they do, sometimes it's okay, you know, because they don't judge a person who stutters as a person who judges themselves sometimes.
Exactly. And people are more understanding than you give them credit for as well, you know.
Exactly right.
We all a little bit too hard on ourselves at times.
And
not a bit, a lot.
I was actually telling you a story the other day. I've had a friend for years and years, and we were playing golf the other day, and he said, "Are we going riding on Sunday?" I said, "Oh, you know, actually, I'm going for speech therapy on Sunday." And he was like, "Why?" I said, "Well, obviously, you know, to help me with my stutter." And he said, "You know, I've known you for about 20 years now. I didn't know you stuttered." And I was like,
"That's incredible."
Well, thanks. And obviously, from a stutterer's point of view, it was like he's just saying that to be nice, because that's how a stutterer would think. He's like, you know, he's not going to say anything, and you know, when you finish that bad speech and they all clap, you know, are they clapping because they're feeling sorry for me? Or are they clapping because it's over? You know, because they're certainly not clapping because it's good.
Says who? Mark?
No, he's saying that's what his brain does with us.
That is the mindset. The mindset's all or nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I believe we are our own worst enemy. So whatever I was trying to say just now, obviously wasn't supposed to say it because the universe kicked me out of my own meeting.
Welcome back, Cam.
Thanks. I'm so glad I could join.
Good to have you back.
I'm glad whoever became the host let me in. I'll never forget. Sorry, I have to share this story quickly. I was on Zoom last year and I was in the middle of a story with my little grade ones, and it was their best time of the day. So it was in the middle of lockdown, like level 5, and it kicked me out. And the next minute I come back on, and this child has grade 1, 7 years old. She's like, hold on, just hold on, I'm gonna go get a book. She ran to her room, she came back, and she just carried on like I wasn't even there. So I had to sit and listen to the rest of her story. They didn't want to hear my story, they wanted to hear her story. So thank you for taking over and for holding the fort. Okay, guys, so thank you. I feel like we're coming to the end of this. Is there anything else that you want to add, Dina, or anybody else before we go?
I think just one thing that I didn't say when you asked what was good, I mean, what's important for a person to do is also when a person, and this is basic communication strategies, which applies to everyone. So if someone is talking to you, stop what you're doing and listen to them. What does listen to them mean? And this goes to do with people who stutter or not. Don't be on your phone. Don't be typing. Don't be whatever. Maintain eye contact and be present. because that is so important. And I think for everyone that is important, and especially for a person who stutters, where some people who stutter, they think that people don't want to hear them, or they don't have time and they're impatient, and this is their thoughts. But if a person isn't present, then that makes their thoughts go wildfire. So I think what's really important, and as I say, this is important with everyone, whether you stutter or not. When someone's speaking to you, have respect for you and them, and stop what you're doing and listen, or tell them, I'd love to hear your story, or just give me 5 minutes and I'll be back with you. So so I think that's something that I think it's important just to add there.
It used to be common sense, but with technology, it's not become common sense anymore. And it's very much, you know immediately when somebody's not in the conversation, and you almost don't really want to carry on. Well, I don't really want to carry on. I'd just rather wait until they're finished. And I'm sometimes do it, but then I try to say, can you just give me a minute? I'll be back with you. Okay, thank you, Dina. Anybody else? Are you guys, you good?
Yeah,
yeah. If you're dealing with the person who stutters, as I said, for fear of repeating myself again, please focus on the content and don't focus on the delivery. Focus on the content, because if you're speaking to a person who stutters, and I'm the wrong person to say this because this is what I do. I'm thinking, shame, this poor girl who's speaking, and you're not even hearing a thing that this person's saying. And it's frustrating enough for someone trying to get a message across. At least, do them a solid and listen to what the person has to say, and stop worrying about the way that it's coming over.
We have such a fixed set mindsets about how things should be and how things shouldn't be, how people should act, how they should speak, how they should dress, how they should. And when they don't, then we have an issue with it. So yes, thank you. That's beautiful, Mark. Graham, I could see you wanted to speak. I promise I'll give you a chance.
Thank you. No, I mean, just to end it off, just from my end, I mean, like I said earlier, just try to take it easy on yourself. If you are a person who stutters and you happen to stutter, all this means is that you just found it hard to get a word out, and this doesn't even mean that the person you're speaking to will even remember it or even judge you based on that, so just to always be just a little bit mindful of that, and also I just want to reiterate, because I like Dina may have said earlier, I had a severe stutter when I was growing up, and just to be aware that there are properly qualified speech therapists out there who can give you the tools that you need, to start your journey, to actually get your speech to where you want it to be. And that's what it's all about, just getting help from others,
And I think, Dina, thank you, Graham. And I think that's very important, because you get people that specialize in things and they're going to get you there a lot quicker because that's their focus. Whereas even though you're trained in all those fields, if it's not your area of expertise, it's going to take a lot longer. And it's like, for example, I'm a life coach and people come to me and they say, I need to deal with grief and past trauma. And I'll refer them to somebody who is specialized in that. So I think that's very important. Okay, and Dina, I think you just want to tell them your email address, and can you just mention again those upcoming events?
Yeah, thanks. So my email address, so speakeasy.org.za is a self-help group. If anyone wants to join, it's great to meet other people who stutter. speakeasy.org.za. And so feel free to go into that website. The workshop is this Sunday, the 10th of October. And if anyone's interested, they can email me on dina.lilian@gmail.com. That's dina.lilian@gmail.com. The 22nd of October is International Stuttering Awareness Day. And I just want to reiterate that there is help up there for all ages. Early intervention is better, but no matter how old you are, there's help out there, there's hope out there. And don't let, as Joe Biden says to a kid on one of his there's a clip that he spoke to a kid, a 13-year-old kid, and he says, don't let stuttering define you. It doesn't have to define you. So yeah, and thank you, Candace, for this opportunity. And Mark and Graham, thank you for sharing your stories. And thank you.
Thank you so, so much, guys. Thank you for your time. You've been awesome from the moment you said yes to your dedication to meeting yesterday and for being fully in. You need to know that every single thing that you've done has definitely making a difference, and just the awareness is really awesome. So thank you, thank you, thank you. So that brings us to the end of episode 9 of this podcast, Resilience to the Core with Candace Bester. And join me again next week, Thursday, same time, 7:30. If you have something that you are passionate about, if there is an awareness you're wanting to create, absolutely any topic, please feel free to email me on info@grit-grow.co.za. And I would love to have you. As you can see, our podcast is growing. We went from just me to interviewing one. Now we've got 3 extra people. So who knows what's going to be in the future. So thank you, guys, and have an amazing evening.